Hello, hi, it's Henry the computer guy, and welcome to our lesson number 39. And in today's lesson, we are going to be looking at the files and folders in general. Remember, on our keywords, we talked about these two, and I tried to explain them a little. So in today's lesson, we're going to be talking about them in general. So what is a file? Actually, a file is a named collection of data. For example, I told you a file can be an image, a file can be an audio, it can be a video, and so many others as we are going to be looking at them. So those are some of the examples of the file. It can be a document. Now, when we come to a folder I told you that it is a container for files, or a virtual container for files, or a collection of files. You can say any of those three that we have seen. I gave you a scenario that, for example, if you're having a box and you're trying to put some items in the box, so the box itself is going to act as our folder. Then the items you're putting into the box are the ones which are going to be acting as our files. For example, you have pens, books, pencils, and others. So those are the ones we are calling the files. Then the box itself is the folder. That means that our folder is going to be a collection of all the files that we are having. Okay, they are telling us that files can be stored in folders, and folders can be stored within other folders, and these are referred to as the subfolders. We saw that one in the beginning, whereby we created the other folders, we added folders there. So a folder into another folder is called a subfolder. Examples of the appearances of a file and a folder in Windows operating system is shown below. For example, if you have ever seen that, and we have seen it in the beginning, that one is what we call the folder. Then this one, if you have ever looked at it, for example, that one is what we call a file, and it is a document or a Word document. So it can either be a video, audio, a Word document, or any other type of file. It can be an image, but all of them are termed as files. Then when we collect them together and put them into the other yellow item, that yellow item is the one we shall be calling a folder. We continue. And they're telling us that we also have what we call a file name and a file extension. Remember, any file that you create has to be having a name such that you can differentiate it from other files. For example, I call this one Henry. I call that one, let's say, the computer guy. So I'm differentiating the two files such that whenever I'm looking for that or any of those two files, I can easily get it with ease. So they're telling us that a file name is a name given to a file to differentiate it from other files. For example, you're in class. Why are you given names? To differentiate you from other people. When I come and say, let's say I call, let's say, John, not everyone is going to put their hands up, except only John. So we give a file a name to differentiate it from other files. That's why we say it is a named collection of the data. And another one, they are telling us that a file extension is a suffix to a file name used to identify the file format. So for example, that extension or that suffix is always separated with a dot at the end of the file name. For example, I have henry.doc or doc. The doc is what we call the file extension. It tells me, or it lets me know in which application was the file made. Or if it is, let's say, having MP3, I'll get to know that this is an audio. If it is, let's say, MP4, I'll get to know that this is a video. So that thing that, or that item that we always have, let's say, having a dot something, is what we call a file extension. And all files have file extensions. Reason being, we have to identify the programs used to make these files. So they're telling us that file names are made up of two parts, document name and the file name. We have already seen the document what? The document name and the file extension. So that means that the name of the document is what we call the document name, and the extension or that extension or suffix is what we call the file extension. The document name can be up to 256 characters long, including spaces, while the file extension is determined by the application being used. If it is a Word document, then it will be having the .doc. If it is PowerPoint, then it can either be having .what? PPT. Or if it is a document, it can also be having a .doc or .docx. We shall see the difference between the .doc and the .docx. Then some examples of file extensions are shown in the table below. For example, we have decided the application that was used to make the file, then the file extension. We have Microsoft Word, and they're telling us that they are always having a .doc or .docx. Then we have PowerPoint, PPT or .pptx. Then Excel, .xls or .xlsx. So now, we are saying they are giving us two. What is the difference between the .doc and the .docx? Have you ever noticed that? So, if you have ever seen or if you have ever used these documents, you will know the difference. Remember, this one is having a .doc and the other one is having a .docx. Why is it that? So, doc is the older version of Microsoft Word document and .docx is the newer version. For example, Microsoft Word 2007 onwards, they will be always having a .x. Sorry, an extension of x, .docx. So if it is the previous version, let's say 97, 2003, those ones are going to be having as the doc. So now, if I say .doc and .docx, you know the difference. They are the same, but the versions go on changing. For example, from 2007 onwards, they will be having a .docx. Then below 97, 2003, they will be having the .doc. It goes for all the others. PowerPoint, PPT, then PPTX, XLS, XLSX. That is a older version, and the other one is a newer version, and onwards, from 7 and onwards. So now, what you'll do for me, you'll identify for me the file extensions of Microsoft Publisher and Microsoft Access. We continue. As we are continuing, let's look at some of the files as we have talked about them here. 1, 2, 3. We click there. So now, we have our folder that is having some of the files here. We have Microsoft Word, we have PowerPoint, Excel, and database. How do we know or how do we get to know a file extension of a file? That is actually what we want to know. So what you do, you're going to come to that file that you want to know, whose file extension you want to know. Right click. When you right click, you're going to come to the properties. When I come to the properties, they are going to tell me it is having a .docx. So they are giving me its name, it is Word, then the .docx. For example, if I happen to either rename it, any name that you give it, it will, let's say, give you what you actually need. So it is a .doc and the name is here that it is having .docx. We can close that. When we come back to PowerPoint, right click and come to properties. It will show you that it is PowerPoint and it is a PPTX. Then we come back to, let's say, Excel. Properties. Then we come, it is, the name is already Excel, that as we wrote it there. Then it is XLSX. Why is it having that X? Because it is a newer version, 7 and above. If it is below, then they will always be putting it on a .doc. Actually, if let's say you wanted to change a .docx to back to doc, just as simple as that doc, we can actually do that also. For example, if I want to change a .docx back to a doc, I will come to my file. Let's say I open this file. It is having empty, or it is empty. It is having nothing. So what I'll do, I'll come to File, I'll come to Save As. I'll come to Save As. Then I'll look for the location where I want to save it. Let me say I want to save it in that current location. Then I'll come and say, I'll give it a name. Let's say I give it, let's say, word2. Then I come to the save as type. Remember, I want it to become a doc, not a .docx. I'm converting it from a .docx to a .doc. So I'll come to the save as type. Then I'll look for Word 97 to 2000 and what? 2003 document. Then I can say save. Let's go back and check whether it changes to a doc. So when I come back here, it has saved it in our folder. When I right click, it will come to the properties. Then it will show us that the name is Word2 and the extension is a doc. Have you noticed that? Then when we come back to the first one we began with, I right click, I'll come to the properties, then I'll check. It is Word and it is .docx. So that's how you can also convert a .docx to a .doc. Are we together? It is actually interesting. We continue. And they are telling us that files and folders can be stored on various storage media such as flash disks, hard disks, memory cards, and many others. You can save them on any that you feel you want. A CD, a DVD, a Blu-ray disc, and others. Remember, we looked at the storage some time back. So I think when I talk about them, you already know what I'm talking about. We continue. So we have some more file extensions. For example, we have that diagram there. So we have a doc. Okay, we are going to be identifying one by one. So we have what we call a doc, .doc. That is actually what we call a document file. When we come to another one, that is the txt. Those are the text files. For example, the notepad, any information you've created in a notepad can be a text. So we call them the txt, text files. Then we can come to the XLS, and that is a spreadsheet file. For example, Microsoft Excel, as we've looked at it before in our previous slide. Then when we come to what we call the MP3, that is actually an audio file. So it is a moving picture 3. So any file is in form of an audio can as well be having what we call MP3. Then we can also have what we call the comma separated values. This .csv, it is a comma separated value, which allows data to be saved in a tabular format. If you want your data to be saved in a table, for example, you're seeing on the diagram here, they're showing you that data is being saved in a tabular format on the comma separated values. Then we continue. We have what we call the DDL, and that is what we call the dynamic link library. Files containing codes for commonly used programs or program functions on personal computers. At times we call them the system files. Those files have to be there for your computer to function or work. We call them the system files, and it's where we have the DLL. Then we have what we call the VOB. The VOB is specifically the video object. For example, you have a video, at times it can have the .vob, or it can have the .mp4, the moving picture 4. So MP4 is a video. Then we can have what we call the RAR, and that is actually the racial archive, specifically compressed files. Are we together? This one specifically supports data compression. For example, we have software such as the WinRAR, WinZip, and others. Then we continue. We have what we call the JPG, and this is a picture file. Some of the pictures are going to be having those extensions, joint photographic group. Or we can have the PNG, which is also a picture file, which is the portable network graphics. We can also have the executable file, exe.exe. These files are meant to be run. For example, some of the softwares we install in the computers are always in the exe format because they are supposed to be run onto the computer, or they are supposed to be executed and they run on our computer. Then lastly, we can have what we call the HTML, and these are web page files. For example, the pages you see over the internet, being displayed over the internet, are made using what we call the HTML, which is the hypertext markup language, and others that we have not talked about. I'm not saying that these ones are the only ones, there are others, but we have not talked about them because there are many. Let's continue. And we have an activity. Remember, we are in chapter 3, and this is our first activity, so it becomes activity 3.1, and it is about file extensions and storage media. So they're asking us that other than hard disks, flash disks, identify other 3 different storage media within your school computer lab. So apart from those 2, you're going to identify for us any other, and we have ever seen them in the previous lessons. Number 2, compare any 2 storage media in terms of their advantage and disadvantage. So you can compare the hard disk and the flash disk. You give the advantages of a hard disk over the flash disk. You give the advantages of a disadvantages of a hard disk over the flash disk. Or you can do it vice versa. You pick the flash disk over the hard disk. That is what they are trying to make. Then lastly, what are the file extensions of the files created with the following? Microsoft Office Access, that is database. Then Microsoft Office Publisher. It is very simple. Just create a file in Publisher, right click on it, go to the properties, it will show you what we call the file extension. And I think you can try that one on your own. I will not tell you the answers. So it's been Henry the Computer Guy. Thank you for giving me your time. Thanks for watching. And if you're new to my channel, I please request you to subscribe. And if you have a friend who needs this content, actually help me and send the link to that person. So let me see you in the next video. I sign out. Bye-bye.